Hello, everybody. Welcome to the third Conspiracy of Love webinar on how brands can help fight coronavirus. My name is Afdal Aziz. I am one of the co-founders of Conspiracy of Love. We are a brand purpose consultancy. I'm coming to you from Venice Beach in Los Angeles, California. Joining me today are my partner in Conspiracy, Bobby Jones, who's in Brooklyn, New York. Hello, Bobby.
Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining us.
Bobby and I got the memo on wearing good as a new cool hats today. We're matchy-matchy today. Good as a new cool is the book that we wrote together. And in future, we're going to start sending each other selfies so we can see what each other is wearing before the webinar starts. Next, we have the wonderful Erhard, who's joining us from, I like to call it as an undisclosed location somewhere near Canton, Massachusetts, outside of Boston. Just say outside of Boston. Who is joining us from Edelman and is an SVP there, and is going to join us to talk about the wonderful COVID-19 Trust Barometer report that Edelman has put out. Thanks for joining us, Anne.
Hi, everybody.
We also have joining us from New York City, Andrew Moers, who is the CMO of Talkspace, an incredible online counseling platform that has donated 100 free hours of therapy to COVID-19 workers, here to talk about the great work that they're doing and how brands can get involved to help as well. Hi, Andrew.
Hey, everyone.
And last but not least, we have Mark DeCourcey from the U.S. Chamber of Commerce Foundation, who's joining us from Washington, D.C. They have launched a very timely fund for small businesses to apply for grants to help them through this crisis. So thank you very much for joining us, Mark.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Okay, so we got a lot to get through today. The format is basically, we're going to start with Anne, who's going to present the Trust Barometer report. Then we're going to go to Andrew to talk about Talkspace, and then Mark. Right throughout, you can ask questions, which Bobby is going to be collecting using the Q&A function at the bottom of your screen there. So keep them coming, and we'll spend 15 minutes at the end answering questions that you may have. I just want to say before we get started, like the last 3 weeks have just been kind of unprecedented, not just in terms of the coronavirus and the pandemic and the economic fallout, but in terms of the response from the business community. It has frankly been astounding to see how fast and how big, the reaction from corporations has been to help people. I think I only realized how big this was when I saw a news report that Netflix had donated $100 million, and I only found out about it a week after it happened. And for somebody who was tracking the whole business as a force for good space, I found that astounding that companies were doing these incredible acts of generosity to help. And there are so many others out there. And that's really the reason we started doing this webinar, is to shine a light on all the great stuff that is happening and try and give data and insights and try and channel resources towards those platforms like Talkspace or the U.S. Chamber of Commerce Foundation that are doing a tremendous amount of good, and mobilize our community of brand leaders and people in culture and nonprofits to really work together. So we're going to keep doing this every Friday, and we'll be sending out a link to this video directly afterwards so that everybody can view it, and announcing next week's guest on Monday in our newsletter. Sign up for it if you haven't already. Okay, enough preamble. And when I saw the report, first of all, every year I look for the Edelman Trust Barometer. It's become one of those go-to pieces of research that help those of us in this space track what's going on. And when I saw how quickly you guys had mobilized to do a specific COVID-19 report, I was really impressed. And I found what was in there to be remarkable as well. We are seeing a level of expectation from consumers towards the brands in their lives to get involved and help fix this crisis in a really unprecedented way. So before you get started with the presentation itself, can you just tell us a little bit about what made you mobilize this so quickly?
Yeah, absolutely. So thank you for that little preamble. For those of you that don't know, Edelman has been putting out our Trust Barometer for 20 years, actually. So we've been basically measuring trust in 4 types of institutions, companies, government, media, and NGOs, and really trying to measure what earns trust, how trust levels change over time, and then what are the detractors of trust. And so, so that we can, help brands, give brands guidance on how to earn trust. And so when this happened, the hypothesis of the report, and I'll show you this in a bit, the hypothesis is that brands need to show up and solve, not just sell. And, so I'll show, kind of the brand actions that brands can take and what folks are expecting. But I kind of think of it as, I was so proud of Richard Edelman and the firm, because this is what we can provide, as a company. Yes, we're going to, counsel our clients on how to show up. And that's the other thing we provide. But as a company, what we can do is do a special report and figure out what trust means and how to earn trust in this crazy time. So this is like our contribution, our best contribution that we can kind of uniquely provide. So hopefully we'll give some good insights to you guys as you try to navigate these crazy times.
Great. Well, thank you so much. Jump right in. And then everybody, remember, you can ask questions of Anne at the end, so keep them coming in. We already see a few. Go right ahead, Anne.
Okay. All right. Let me share my screen here. Get this up. That work? Can everybody see my screen?
Can everybody see Anne's screen?
Okay.
Yes.
Oh, you can. Okay. Thanks. Okay. So I told you why we did it. What we've been in 12 markets. So this is a global study. You can see here where we've been and sort of when this took place. We did this from March 23rd to March 26th. And really,
I'm sorry.
Okay.
Can everybody see the screen? I can't see the screen, guys. Can we take a look and see what's going on? It's coming in from the panelists. Share screen at the bottom.
Yeah.
And then click on, no, nothing happening. Hold on a second.
Sorry.
That's okay. We can go to plan B. I have it here, and as well, if you want me to try and share my screen, and then you can just call out the slide numbers or go to next slide.
Yeah.
Oh, here we go. Anna started screen sharing. Hooray! Okay, cool.
It worked?
Yes, we're seeing your desktop. Yes. Okay, cool. If you could make it full screen.
Amazing. Okay, I don't know what I did differently, but
Technology. Go for it. Thanks, Anne.
Okay, awesome. All right. So here you can see it's a global study. We were in 12 markets. You can see where we were and that this took place March 23rd to March 26th. These are really sort of the main insights gleaned from the report. This is the way that we've organized the data in the coming slides that you're going to see. It's really what Richard Edelman is sort of calling the roadmap for brands in building trust during the pandemic. So first and foremost, brands need to show up. It's really not the time to go dark. You need to communicate, share, build community, and we'll see, sort of why we're saying that. As I mentioned, sort of the hypothesis of the study was brands are going to need to provide solutions and not just sell products or services. Don't go it alone. You'll see the expectations of consumers that brands really collaborate in this time and kind of come together on the right solutions. And then communications need to change. The same exact ads and messages, people are going to shut down and not listen. The same spokespeople are not going to be, isn't going to be the right way to communicate in this time. We're going to need a mix of sort of emotion, compassion, as well as facts. So why do we think brands need to show up and do your part? So the first, the left of this slide, the 81% is something that we found from our broader trust barometer. This is just to sort of set up that trust matters for brands. Brand trust is seen as a deal breaker or deciding factor in whether a consumer purchases a product. So basically, brand trust is a big deal. It matters. And really today, folks are expecting brands to do a lot to ensure their employees are not only protected from the virus, but that they're doing their part not to spread the virus further into their communities. As you can see, 6 in 10 or more folks expect information and facts on what we're doing and how we can help even daily. So not only do consumers want brands to show up, but they really feel like brands need to show up. 62% sort of globally see brands as critical to winning the fight. And, you know, all through the world, the majority of people really said, we're not going to make it through without the support of brands. And that, you know, brands are doing a better job than government. And this was early. I mean, we're still early in this, and this was, you know, last week of March. Very early still, last week of March, but already, you know, we're starting to see people saying we're boycotting brands or convincing others to stop purchasing brands if that brand is sort of putting out some hype or not really acting in tune with what's happening. People are going to get irritated and sort of stop purchasing that particular brand. And this is fairly consistent with other studies that we've done on earned brand and that kind of thing. So not only sort of show up and do your part, but really it's going to be about solutions and not just selling products or services, as I mentioned. You know, the first really big finding here is that brands are being held responsible for a lot, and probably, you know, much more than they would be expected to do typically, or to be held accountable for typically. So certainly the well-being of employees, as we saw in the first slide, the safety of employees, but also, you know, protecting jobs and protecting that financial well-being of their own employees, even if it means financial loss, even if it means, you know, challenging financials. Now, there's a lot of ways I think that brands can show up, whether you're sort of a direct-to-consumer product or more of a B2B. One way on the left here is really in shifting products or services in ways that are going to meet new challenges seen based on the pandemic. And then the other way is by offering product at a discount or donated product to those particularly impacted by the crisis. And we're seeing this both ways from lots of brands. You know, the third way, which we'll get to in a sec, is partnering with nonprofits and NGOs in order to innovate and help. And why this matters, why sort of showing up in these two ways matters, is that, you know, again, early into this, late March, the majority of folks were already saying, you know, we're starting to not really pay attention. We're not really paying attention to new products right now, unless it's particularly relevant to sort of what's going on today. You know, another interesting bit here, I think, is the interest in brands serving as an information source. So 84% sort of globally saying that they want brands to keep us informed about the virus. This is about, you know, facts. Give us the facts so that we can make good decisions. But going kind of one step further from providing the facts and being an information source, there's an opportunity to be an educator, to use your brand platform to educate folks. You know, we've seen brands sort of using their platform to tell people to, you know, Dove telling people to wash their hands, Reddit taking out billboards in Times Square telling people to stay home, sort of using your brand for that platform that makes sense and is educational for folks. You know, as I said, sort of the thesis of this whole study was really about solving, not selling. And it's not just the two ways I just talked about showing up by kind of one, shifting products, or two, offering them for free or for less, but also ensuring your messages about those products and what it is that you do have sort of reflects those new expectations of folks. How it's particularly helping in these times, how it's different, you know, showing that 77%, showing that you're aware of the crisis and how you fit in, how this fits in. The next piece is sort of not going it alone, which I don't think will be a surprise to anybody. But really, you know, the vast majority of folks, 9 out of 10, we heard that folks believe brands are critical to winning this fight. And we heard that folks believe that, the majority of folks believe that brands are doing better than government in sort of creating solutions. So it's not really a surprise that 9 in 10 folks believe that brands should be partnering with government as well as NGOs, relief agencies to address the crisis. Beyond the collaboration, though, there is this opportunity to sort of fill gaps and kind of be that safety net where government and NGOs might not be. So this is about, you know, innovation, new technology, that sort of thing. So it's also not just about partnering with government and NGOs, but also about partnering with the right experts, the right spokespeople. As I mentioned, people aren't going to be listening to the same ads and sort of the same spokespeople, probably not so much listening to celebrities these days. As you can see here, it's really doctors and health authorities are the #1 most trusted. There is still, though it's like way further down than sort of doctors and health experts, there is a space for brand experts and CEOs themselves as well, but to a much smaller scale, we're seeing influencers and celebrities being a trusted source of information today. So just being attuned to that. Now this is about sort of not only brands' ability to collaborate with government, NGOs, and experts, but it's also, collaboration should be sort of seen as brands' opportunity to build community, connecting people, connecting with their networks, their communities to make people feel emotionally close. There's sort of a bigger opportunity than ever for brands to sort of play that role in facilitating community as well. So sort of partnering with people too. So now we'll sort of pivot. Oops, did I go backwards? Sorry. Now I'll pivot from sort of what we're hearing about how to act and how to behave to how to communicate and what are the right messages. So we can see here, facts are important, but so is emotion and passion. So, you know, I think because this is such a sort of profoundly scary and uncertain time, brands need to show up as human. And this is really the best way to communicate, with a sense of humanity. 89% of folks are keen to know all the ways that brands are helping, but you also have to sort of show and share with people the changes in your operations, how you're changing production lines, what you're doing in other ways besides your sort of outward expression of how you're helping. So we had to ask, because there is so much information coming out of brands today, we had to ask, you know, whether that information is a source of sort of comfort or if it's just adding to the anxiety. And what this slide shows is, you know, for the most part, information is, you know, being viewed as a source of comfort, much more than as a detractor of comfort or a sense of a source of anxiety. So the opportunity for brands is to show they care. You know, 80+% want brands to share public statements of support. You know, we're seeing this. You're seeing this as you sit in front of the TV at night, from your, you know, local cable companies, obviously, to technology, to consumer products as well. I think a lot of clients and brands have started to ask the question of, you know, what is the role of humor and sort of escapism in this? And I think the best advice here is really to tread cautiously and to be true to your brand. So, you know, the majority of folks said, stop sort of the, overly humorous or overly lighthearted content. I think, it's just a fine line between giving a respite from the heavy and the crazy to just being seen as just off track and off base. So now, beyond sort of what you're communicating and how you're communicating, this slide starts to show where you should be communicating, and it shows just overwhelmingly how sort of traditional media is the kind of #1 trusted news source right now from brands, but then owned and social channels obviously have a very strong place. So just as we said, facts are going to be really important, but so is that human emotion and community building aspect. Share the information, share the education through your traditional media, and then, leverage owned and social channels to be more of that emotional content, that community building content. Again, earned media is leading in believability. Whether that's national or local media, it really only needs to be seen sort of once or twice to be heard and trusted, whereas it takes a bit more for trust to be gleaned from seeing word of mouth or social media. So why is this all important? Sort of what's the potential impact for brands on the positive side, the upside and the downside? I think, brand trust today is winning out. 60% are moving toward the brands that they can absolutely trust. So I think the upside is strong to do it right and to show up and do your part. Even again, it's early in this, but 37%, more than a third, have said they started using a new brand because of the way that they're responding in the pandemic. We saw in the very beginning, the opposite side of this, the negative side of this, is that 1/3 of folks have started to not use the brand because of the wrong sort of response in this. So I think the plus side is high and the negative side is as well. And I think it's an indicator that there's going to be it's going to impact long-term trust, if you will. So 65% say that how brands behave today is going to have an impact on how I view them in the future and whether I'm going to buy them in the future. And, there's a possibility that they'll lose my trust forever based on the response today. So just in closing, again, these sort of 4 principles. Not the time to go dark. Folks want to hear from you, and they want to hear what you are doing and how you're doing it and why you're doing it. Don't go it alone. Think about solving, not selling. There is an opportunity to market, but marketing in a way that is in tune to what folks are going through today. And then, thinking about shifting your communications, just like we're talking to each other in a different way and in a much more human and emotional way in our personal interactions. Brands have the opportunity to sort of shift in the same way. Okay, now I'll try to figure out how to stop sharing, Afdel. Here we go.
Yay, well done. Thank you very much, Anne. That was wonderful. Thank you for doing that. That's so fascinating, the data and insights there. And what was it one of the stats that stood out to you the most, that was most surprising?
I think it's like, I think this notion of sort of buying and boycotting is not surprising. It's sort of consistent with what we've seen, but it's going to be important. And I think the long-term impact that brands can do today by showing up, I think it's really going to provide, it can really be important for trust in the long haul.
I want to build on that and show you guys something. Now I'm going to try and share my screen, but these are 2 sites that I found. One is this is a real-time crowdsourced Google spreadsheet called UK Business Coronavirus Response for Workers. This is a list that people are making of how brands have responded. Red is bad, green is great, yellow is so-so. If you want any more proof that people are paying very close attention,
Wow.
you should go to this site because it is fascinating. It is broken down by retail, food and drink. And then there's also this site called Did They Help, where you can literally put in
Oh, wow.
the name of a company or a celebrity and find out what they're doing right now in real time. Heroes and zeros is how they're tagging it as well. So it just
I've
goes.
already seen the first article talking about COVID washing too.
Wow, COVID washing.
Yeah.
Wow. I didn't
Yeah.
think about that.
So we've gone from green washing to woke washing to COVID washing.
Oh my gosh, it is truly incredible. Thank you for sharing that with us, Anne. Much appreciated. All right, so now let's talk about somebody who's in the middle of actually helping, and I want to bring in Andrew Moers. Andrew, you're on mute at the moment. You may need to just take your mute off.
Hello.
Andrew, Talkspace came across our radar as Conspiracy of Love when we were out there looking at the issue of mental health and looking at innovative ways to solve it in ways that were scalable, that gave access to people who didn't necessarily have the ability to go to a therapist in their local hometown. So I just want to start by help us understand, what is Talkspace and how did it start? Because there's a really interesting story about a husband and wife team who went to marriage therapy, and that's how this whole thing started, right?
Yes, that's very true. Thanks for having me first. So back in 2012, Oren and Roni Frank were working in media and technology and married at the time, and were having difficulties in their marriage and went to couples therapy. And they often say, it saved their marriage. And Roni was so inspired by, this momentous thing that happened to them that she went back, and quit her job as a developer to become a therapist herself. And then, decided together that, given the mental health epidemic that has been going on for years, that there really needed to be a way to sort of modernize the accessibility to therapy. And they actually started with group therapy. But what they realized is that people were writing long, personal notes to the customer service alias. So really looking to reach out and write and message their thoughts, which led to the real innovation of Talkspace, which is messaging therapy. So in addition to synchronous video and audio therapy, Talkspace offers messaging therapy, so you can message with your therapist, 5 days a week, and you'll be, kind of interacting as you're, having feelings and thoughts that are coming up, rather than waiting for the next, scheduled meeting. And so that was, really to break down one of the big challenges which is accessibility, but also in terms of the cost, created a platform that's much more reasonable than, the traditional in-person therapy sessions.
And it's fascinating, just by making it asynchronous and making it something that people can access using their phone anywhere they are in the world, at a time and place of their choosing. I think that has really led to the massive uptake, right? Right now, how many therapists do you guys have, and how many people are using the platform before COVID started?
Yeah, you're exactly right. Like, flash forward to now, and now there's always been a need, but now there's really a need because you can't see someone in person. So we've got thousands of licensed therapists. We've served 1.5 million people over the past 8 years, and demand, has surged. And keying off of what Anne said, we're trying to, our core product addresses a real need. But we're also focused on, and have been focused on, providing free resources to larger groups that are in need. But one thing to note, before this started, I think it was 1 in 5 adults in America were dealing with a mental health issue. The Kaiser Family Foundation ran a poll, like I think it was a week or two ago, and that it's now risen to 45%, which is remarkable. And like I think 20% of people are really feeling acute issues of mental health due to COVID. And then something came out today that I just read that another poll that indicated that almost 77% of Americans are having difficulty sleeping because of COVID.
Wow. Well,
Really.
this is where you guys seem to be the right place, right time. Just to expand a little bit so people understand the depth, talk about some of the specialities also that your therapists have, so it's a broad spectrum of different types of help, right, that you can get on the platform.
Yeah, I mean, the difference between us and most other consumer brands is that you're always interacting with a licensed clinician. So it's real therapy. That being said, they also leverage cognitive behavioral therapy and other sort of mindfulness techniques when appropriate to work with patients and clients. And also psychiatry is available. So if your issue is acute and you need medication, and you can access that as well. And then we've got the interesting thing about having such a broad set of therapists is that we have people that deal with specific populations like LGBTQ, people that are dealing with particular issues like couples issues or anxiety, or there's the list goes on.
So I can imagine the couples therapy spiking right about now as well.
It very much is. It very much is. Yes.
Well, one of the remarkable things that you guys did was you decided to donate about 100 years of therapy. That equates to about 1,000 months. So first of all, thank you for doing that. That's a remarkable gesture. Talk a little bit about how that happened and how your therapist got involved as well in helping.
Yeah. So as everyone has noticed and understands, the frontline medical workers today are sort of the heroes in our society and are, obviously on the front lines to address this pandemic. And without them, we would be, I don't know where we'd be. So we felt an imperative to, help those who are helping others. And these folks are under just extreme mental toll and stress. And so what we decided to do was to start by offering 100 months, as you said. That's almost, 1,000 months, which is almost 100 years. And then we reached out to our therapists and asked them to participate and said, if you want to donate your time, we'll match it. So immediately and amazingly, we had another 300 months of therapy donated by our therapist, which we matched. And then we have Michael Phelps, who's struggles with mental health, are well documented, is an investor and a partner and our spokesperson, and he added by donating 500 months. So that's, as we've calculated, about 175 years of therapy, and we have had we've had over 1,000 therapists frontline medical workers or first responders come to us and are actively in therapy right now. And the stories are just remarkable in terms of the issues that they're dealing with and the ways in which they've come to us. And so what we're doing now, we want to make sure that and we've had, all kinds of brands and folks and hospitals and people reach out to us, to help address the issues of other folks on the front lines, like people working in homeless shelters or with the elderly, who are very much in a similar position and not as focused upon. I personally loved on the show to reach out to other brands who are trying to figure out how to help. I don't think there's anything more important you could do at this point, but help these folks and help them address and deal with the extreme mental toll that they're under. So if other companies want to participate, we're accepting donations from other brands to add to the availability.
Yeah, and we'd highly encourage everybody listening, if you could reach out to your networks and find brands that you think can help. This is a terrific platform. We'll be connecting Andrew to everybody after this as well. I think also important to note, you guys do enterprise level services as well for bigger companies during normal times as well.
Yeah.
Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, no, so we're available through insurance. I think we're soon to be covering around 30 million lives nationally. We're also partnered with a number of EAPs, and we actually launched our own EAP program, which is in last week, which is 100% digital and really built for the modern, remote workforce.
Sorry, what is EAP? Could you just explain?
Employee assistance program. So, it doesn't surprise me that you'd have to ask, because I think it's the best kept secret in corporate America, where these programs are available to employees, but they're not often utilized because they're not very accessible. And we also have relationships with a number of direct enterprise relationships where we work with companies to provide access to therapy for free.
Amazing.
Yeah.
We will share a link to Talkspace in the chat room so you can do it as well. But Andrew, thank you very much for joining us, and stick around for some questions in a bit. Keep those questions coming in. We're seeing a few. We're going to answer them at the bottom of this webinar. All right, so we're going to go from mental health to small business. Joining us is Mark DeCourcey from the U.S. Chamber of Commerce Foundation. Mark, thank you for joining us from Washington, D.C. So first of all, maybe just explain to us, because we have a lot of people from outside of the country as well, what is the U.S. Chamber of Commerce and what is the U.S. Chamber of Commerce Foundation specifically there to do?
Sure. No, Aftel, thank you very much for the opportunity. I think easily put, the Chamber of Commerce, the U.S. Chamber of Commerce, just like chambers of commerce and state and localities all over the United States, but also all over the world, they exist to help companies do well. Make a profit, hire people, grow economies. It's very commercial. The U.S. Chamber of Commerce Foundation, however, exists to help companies do good. Mm-hmm. And we believe there's a synergy between doing well and doing good. You can't have one without the other. So we exist to help companies, many of those who are probably listening in right now, really maximize their social impact. We share best practices. We help tell their stories to inspire others. And we convene. Before COVID-19, we convene a lot in person all over the country. Now we do it online.
I've been privileged to speak at your event last year as well, which is where we met, and I got to know the incredible work you guys do. What are you seeing out there in terms of the businesses? It seems like it's carnage out there.
Yeah, well, a couple of things that really come to mind. First, you showed that site where the companies are red and yellow and green, and those might be COVID washing, to Ann's point. But we do the opposite. Mm-hmm. We have a corporate aid tracker where we're showing everyone who wants to come to our website all the good things companies are doing. Mm-hmm. And we do this for any disaster, but this is the biggest one. So as of this morning, we've tracked over $5 billion worth of charitable acts from over 400 companies. That's only 400 companies, right? I mean, there's so many more out there doing things that we just don't know about. So I would say to those people who are watching, if your company's doing something and we don't know about it, please tell us, because we want to capture it and catalog it so the world can see.
Yeah, and thank you for that. I just shared with everybody the COVID aid tracker. That is fascinating. Just to point of clarification, those two sites are tracking the good and the bad. So they're calling out companies doing amazing work as well. But specifically in this moment, what I wanted to talk about was this fund that you have helped create with some of the partners out there. The founding partner, I believe, is Vistaprint, who does a lot of stuff with small businesses. And I think you have other folks like the S&P Global Foundation, Merck, and Travelers. You set up this fund, which is to help small businesses, right? Can you talk a little bit about what that's about?
Yeah, so we do a lot of things at the Chamber Foundation, but during disasters, and again during this one in particular, we have two real principles. One is we want to assist large companies in giving help, right? Mm-hmm. So we have corporate aid tracker, we do coordination calls and meetings to share best practices, so companies can know how they can help each other and also help their communities and work together. So we help the large companies to give help, but we also help small companies in getting help. And that's where I think the two collide here in this fund that we set up. We launched it on Wednesday this week with Vistaprint as our founding partner, and Merck and Travelers and S&P Global Foundation as supporting partners. And that's just the tip of the iceberg. We're still out there talking to companies. We need their help. We need their money. And this is a great brand opportunity to show that you care about small businesses and their employees. So I'll tell you a little bit about the fund. The fund itself is to those small businesses in the most vulnerable communities across the country. So we've used an index called the Distressed Community Index that the EIG group, a think tank here in Washington, put together. It has 7 different variables that go in to say, here is a rank order of zip codes across the United States on who's vulnerable and who's distressed before COVID-19. Now, I think you can make the argument that everyone is a little bit vulnerable now and a lot distressed, but we wanted to focus on the bottom part of that index. So that's step 1. Step 2, small businesses can be up to 500 people and less than $1 billion in revenue. Doesn't feel small when you get those big numbers. So we wanted to focus on the real small ones, those who have employees from 3 to 20, where we thought a $5,000 donation could keep them going for a few more weeks. This isn't magic. It's not going to solve all their problems. There's a lot of funds out there, including the federal government, which I think will be reloaded, hopefully next week. But until that bigger money comes, you need a little bit of something, right? It's unrestricted for your business expenses. So if you've got payroll, you got insurance, fuel, it could be anything. It's restocking inventory, reopening. There's going to be costs associated for these small businesses just to reopen. And $5,000 might actually help out a lot.
Yeah.
Well, we're doing that. The fund itself, you can't apply yet. The announcement was on this Wednesday. The portal opens Monday, April 20th. So next Monday at 3 p.m. Eastern.
And sorry, go ahead, Mark, I interrupted.
Just gonna say, and where is it, right? So it's savesmallbusiness.com. It's pretty simple.
Savesmallbusiness.com. I'm going to send this URL to everybody. But here is the thing. You've already had about 20,000 businesses sign up.
Yeah, and growing, right? So when we launch and open up that portal, we're going to have more demand than we do supply. And that's why I think it's important for companies to rethink how they want to be seen, particularly helping small businesses. This is a great opportunity to do so.
Yeah. I think all those brands out there, whether you're Dropbox or Square or Shopify or WeTransfer or QuickBooks, like anybody who is there, whose customers are small businesses, should be donating to this fund. I think they should be donating big and donating fast right now, because that number is frightening that you haven't even opened it as yet, and 20,000 businesses have signed up for $5,000. Because it may just be the difference between them, staying open or just collapsing completely as well.
Yeah, let me tell you about, Ann talked about surveys, and then, we did one with MetLife. It's a quarterly index on small business. We've moved it now to monthly because we need the information quicker. But at the end of March, we surveyed small businesses across the country. And what we found was really disturbing, that by the end of May, a quarter of them will be out of money and out of business.
Wow.
Now, 10% of the overall sample will be out of business by the end of this month if they don't get the help that they need, which is why it's so critical that the federal government continue to step up. We hope that they do. And for those of you who are not that familiar with the U.S. Chamber of Commerce Foundation and the U.S. Chamber of Commerce, we're not the government, right? We're not that. We represent the private sector. We're a 501c6 and 501c3 entity. But here's the important part about funds, whether it's coming out of the federal government, whether it's us, Facebook's got something going on, Verizon's got something. There's a bunch out there. Just help somebody, right? It's always true when you pool resources, you can go further. So you don't have to recreate the wheel. I think there's enough infrastructure out there with a number of funds that you can actually make a big difference just by writing a check.
Amazing, Mark. Thank you for that. I 100% agree and endorse everything you just said. I think We're sharing the savesmallbusiness.com URL in the chat room here. We will also circulate it after this as well. Thank you for sharing that, Mark. We're going to turn to some questions now, and I'm going to turn to Bobby, who's been collecting them throughout. We have about 15 minutes left. Yeah, Bobby, over to you to pick up some of the bigger questions that have been asked here.
All right, thank you. Well, thank you. First of all, thanks to Ann and Mark and Andrew, and thanks for the questions that people have been sending. Just the first one, just for everyone, I know Alex had answered, well, these slides, everything, the slides and these links will all be available. We'll be sending all of it out to the attendees, and the stuff will be accessible on the Conspiracy of Love site. The first question for our panelists comes from Mimi Fernandez to Ann. When you talk about brands throughout the research, is Edelman drawing any distinction between brands and companies, or are those two terms being used interchangeably?
I'm using them interchangeably. We're talking about corporate brands, companies. I saw that one come through. Sorry about that. Yeah.
No problem. And a follow-up from Peter Raymond, who says, "Hi, Ann, I'm a massive fan of your Good Purpose reports, which have always concentrated on the power of the younger generations being much more influenced in their purchasing decisions by brands, purpose-driven behavior. Do you do any of your age profiling on your COVID research? Are there any segmentations or significant differences between generations and ages?"
You know, it's a great question. I don't know if they've sliced it, to be perfectly honest, I don't know if they've sliced and diced it against demographics, ages, male, female, that sort of thing yet. Normally when we do trust and earned brand, as you've seen, we cascade out, we'll do the global study, then we cascade out a US study where we break down, you know, all those interesting insights. And I don't know that they've gotten that far on this, or if they will. They've been busy doing the research and breaking it out and that sort of thing. But as soon as we get off this, I'll check in the files and things and see if we have some breakouts. And if not, I'll get in touch with the research team and see if they're planning to do that. But I think, you know, I'll check if we've got it and if we're doing it. But I think the hypothesis that you see trend-wise between age groups will likely hold quite true with this, which is, yes, you know, younger generations, millennials, Gen Z, tend to over-index on expectations of brands around purpose. So I wouldn't be shocked that, you know, when you look at certainly things about behaviors with brands like purchase intent or whether they'll boycott, will likely, you know, they would likely over-index there as well.
Great, thanks, Ann. Next question is for Andrew. The first question is, how does Talkspace deal with privacy issues across the board?
Everything's like strictly HIPAA compliant, so privacy is of utmost importance and completely respected. So it's just like going to your therapist. It's no different, like in person.
Great, thank you. And the second question again for you, Andrew. Love the concept of assessing therapy through a tech platform, given the stigma around mental health. Does Talkspace cater to a global audience? Frontline emergency aid workers globally could really benefit from this type of service.
Yeah, so all of our therapists are located in the US, but we do have folks that call in from abroad, or video in, I should say. And so we do have a population of folks outside the US. So if there are folks that want to reach out, most of our therapists are English speaking primarily, but there are some that speak Spanish and other languages.
Thank you. Question, Mark, for you. I know oftentimes whenever businesses and sometimes individuals do good, there's always this tendency to do so very privately and not necessarily pat yourself on the back and so forth. When you see research such as what Anne and her team over at Edelman have shown in terms of people wanting to know what businesses are doing and actually making decisions based on the extent to which they're showing. Are you seeing brands become much more vocal, and do you think that this type of research hopefully can help motivate brands to be more open and you know, in sharing the impacts that they're helping to make out in the communities?
Yeah, absolutely. For starters, if you share, you also have the ability to inspire, right? If other companies haven't seen something really creative that you've done, how would they know that they couldn't do it themselves? So I would say to any brand, tell your story and have your partners tell the story for you as well, because they're oftentimes maybe even a better validator of real impact. So I think it's really important that you can inspire others, and you should. But you also have, the commercial side of, you want people to understand what you stand for, what your purpose is, what kind of company you are. And they would never know that unless someone is telling the story, and you can do it yourself and you can do it with your partners. It's critical, I think.
Yeah, I would just add, I mean, listen, like, particularly in this time, it's a challenging time, right? Media is changing, newsrooms are changing, they're covering different things, they're going through their own challenges with furloughs and that sort of thing. I think it's like all about the right messages in the right places. Use your own channels, use your social channels to tell your story, but then as Mark shared, for companies doing good or partnering and collaborating, companies will be brought along by their partners too. A lot of my clients are, doing really good things that's very true to their own corporate purpose, even before the pandemic, which I think is really important to stay true to yourself and sort of, respond in a way that's unique to you. But they're being sort of brought along by, the groups that they're helping and the beneficiary audiences that they're helping. So I think, for different mediums, different places where you're communicating, the message just has to be right. And you need to take care not to be just shouting from the rooftops, patting yourself on the back when a lot of folks are doing a lot of good, just being sensitive to that.
Absolutely, absolutely. One more follow-up question for you, Anne, and I have a question for Andrew as well. Peter wants to know, it would be fascinating to know what types of business sectors people are expecting more action from than others. This will help us to, as Peter says, harass various sectors.
Yeah, I was just reading that as you're, right, this will help us harass. So we often do, we ask sector related questions in our broader trust analysis. So let me see if we have any data, sector specific data. I'm not sure that we do in this quick study, but I'll check on it. Again, I doubt that it will be very different. I think it'll be aligned to what we see around purpose expectations among sectors, even beyond the pandemic. So let me pull some of that and I can share it with Afdal.
I'll just jump in here and say, I just shared a link. It's a fascinating New York Times report last week about how the virus transformed the way Americans spend their money. And you can literally see which sectors are up and which sectors are down. Grocery, as you can imagine, is up. And there are anecdotal reports that we've had from certain CPG companies where brands are doing high double-digit numbers in growth, right? So if you're a platform that's benefiting or a brand that's benefiting from this moment, I mean, I'm looking at you, Zoom, like you better be making significant contributions back to help the situation as well. So yeah, we have another 6 minutes or so we have left for more questions. So I'll throw it back to Bobby.
Right. So Andrew, so Amanda wants to know, are you in need of more therapists during this time, and how can they apply?
Yeah, so by the way, I wanted to add to my prior answer, which for the person that was asking about access from abroad, we've also launched a number of free resources for folks that aren't current subscribers. So we have a number of therapist-led Facebook groups centered around specific issues, family and parenting, social isolation, dealing with the anxiety around contraction. We've got 5,000 people who have signed up for these, so they're pretty powerful in a way to connect in with the rest of the folks who are in our community who are dealing with issues right now and concerns. Also, we've got Instagram, a bunch of things going on our Instagram channel. We've got daily AMAs where people can ask questions of our clinicians and receive responses, and Instagram live videos where our therapists are talking. And then also on our blog, we've got a number of therapist videos with tips and guidance, as well as a number of articles that we've written to address specific issues from a clinical standpoint. So things that anyone anywhere in the world can access. In terms of therapy, in terms of therapists, it's interesting that you asked that because obviously right now all of the traditional therapy practices are, you can't meet with someone in person, so folks are having to resort to the phone and everything. So we've seen a 6-fold increase in the number of therapists that are coming to our platform because we have a platform that they can connect to patients through. So yes, we're absolutely accepting therapists, and we've got a number of tools via the platform that can help to drive towards better outcomes as well. So it's not just a video interface, but there's a lot more to the platform and our technology, leveraging AI and the like to deliver better outcomes.
Thank you, Andrew.
Bobby, can I just add one other thing about the
Sure.
communications? I think it's really important for brands. The other thing we're helping clients with a lot is when you're thinking about communicating the good that you're doing for other beneficiary audience or communities in need, you just really need to make sure that you're taking care of your employees first and foremost. We're talking to brands a lot about that, just being really sensitive to, if you've got hourly workers that are being laid off or furloughed, and then, you're not gonna, like, in the next blush, talk about the $100 million. You just have to make sure you're taking care of your employees and that you're kind of syncing up your messaging. That's really important.
Thanks for adding that. Those messages that need to be aligned. Your actions and your words in that sense. Mark, one more question for you. I'm curious, as we talk about a lot of the what we see are these massive companies making massive donations, and filling a real void in terms of quantity and scale. Are there particular issues or problems that you're seeing that are COVID related that you feel like small businesses are really well positioned to help solve, in either in the ones that they're sharing what they're doing, or just opportunities particularly for small businesses who are looking to get involved, who obviously can't write $1 million check or produce 100,000 masks?
Yeah. Well, I guess it really depends. The answer is, I hope so. And it depends on if they're open, right? So for a lot of these small businesses, you actually have to be there to do something, right? Important in your community. And that's just not possible for so many of them. But for those that are, I would say this, you can impact your community, right? You don't have to try to boil the ocean. Like, find what is needed to be done right in your backyard. I'll give you a good example. So here in Fairfax County, Virginia, there's a feeding crisis going on right now. There are a lot of hungry people. There's not enough food at the food pantries. If you're a small business, particularly if you're somewhere in the food chain, you can help. If you're a restaurant, you can help. You can help by just receiving bulk food goods and breaking it down into family-sized food goods and getting it to the food pantry. That's your superpower, right? You know how to handle food. And this goes to something that Ann said about, do what you're good at. Every company, every small business out there, you've got a superpower. Edelman's got a superpower, right? And we saw it today. Use it. Don't try to be something you're not. Figure out what you're really good at and probably better than most. Do that thing and focus on that thing. And then for small businesses, there's a lot of need in your backyard, and do it there.
Well said.
Awesome. Well, we're at time, guys. Thank you, Bobby, for taking the questions. We want to say thank you to all of our panelists today. Anne Erhard from Edelman, Mark DeCourcey from the U.S. Chamber of Commerce Foundation, Andrew Moers from Talkspace. Directly after this, in the next 5 minutes or so, you should all be receiving a link. If you signed up to the webinar with a link to this video, please share it, spread the word, invite more people to come, as well as a Dropbox link to the presentation that Anne did as well. So all that remains for me to say is to say thank you, stay safe, stay well, and try to help each other wherever you are. Thank you very much. Bye now.